Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett. Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Host of the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Let's get down to business.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Well, the Democratic Party is in complete and utter disarray, and I really do mean complete chaos. The situation right now over on the left side of the aisle is just people running around screaming, chickens with their head cut off, not in front of the public. No. I'm talking about the internal leadership of the Democratic Party. Things ain't looking good, Chief. Welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast. I'm Tony Kinnett. Let's dig into a few of these things. The reason that we're seeing this chaos right now inside the leadership tiers, mainly between Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House, and now residential corpse of the Democratic Party, which, to be fair, they've got a lot of those to choose from, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York, are currently vying over who gets to lead the Democratic Party in the future. The wild horse candidate from the outside is Senator John Fetterman from Pennsylvania. And there are three very different directions that are plotted out pretty openly of the three. Now, the reason that this is particularly chaotic is because of the insane moves that are currently afoot in the Biden administration. And this is really where it gets it's thing after thing after thing. So, for example, Biden shocked a lot of individuals today by pardoning 39 more individuals convicted of various nonviolent crimes, although certainly not, for some of them, crimes that are just some to shrug off, then also commuted the sentences of about 1,500 people. It is the single largest clemency and commutation of any president at the end of his term. The one who only comes close to him is Barack Obama. Go figure. So who are some of the people that Biden decided to pardon? Who are some of the people that those staffing the White House have decided to pardon? Well, they range from a lot of individuals regarding to theft and drug charges, and then, of course, to Chinese spies, including one with a massive ton of child pornography. We'll get into that with Jim Pfaff from the Conservative Caucus here in a few moments, because the Biden-Harris administration also has released $10 billion in Iranian sanctions after Donald Trump won the November election. That's according to the Post-Millennial. The Biden administration, who came out and bragged about Syria's downfall, the al-Assad regime, is bragging even though they're releasing more money to Iran. It's so funny to watch Biden come try to play some kind of a tough game on Iran and then turn around and just send pallets and pallets and pallets of cash to Tehran. It's genuinely wild. We'll get into some of the specifics on why this is so hilarious in a little bit, because individuals like Chuck Schumer, who like to talk a big game about why the House and the Senate need to stay open and things need to be funded because of federal emergency management agencies. The federal government is continually releasing billions of dollars in foreign aid and unfettered sanctions to adversarial nations around the globe, and just giving the middle finger to, for example, survivors of Hurricane Milton and Hurricane Helene on the eastern seaboard. Also, according to an exclusive report over from the Daily Wire, who has just been hitting home run after home run on exclusive reports, shows that Biden, in his last couple of days, is trucking away unused border wall supplies to be sold at an auction place. So here is footage provided by the Daily Wire. You can actually see the trucks carrying away part of the steel and the iron from the wall. So there's this government auction site north of the border where, hey, you can bid on an entire segment of the wall for just $5, which, I'm sorry, that's disgusting. That's disgusting. And the reason I'm saying that is disgusting is because everyone is quite understanding of what is going to be done with those materials, and to just give away things that taxpayers paid for, right? For $5 is a very, very gross form of governance. I was told that if Congress allotted a certain amount of money for something, that the president then had to carry through that amount of money towards that project. And once you buy or manufacture the chunks of the border wall, you can't just snap your fingers and have not sunk that cost into that project. The materials are there. The metal has been forged and shaped and linked together in places. So selling it at $5 a pop as a first auction is indeed ridiculous. And it's one of the reasons why Americans are so ready for the Trump nominees to swing in and take over after just the abysmal secretaries from Lloyd Austin to Mayorkas, from Pete Buttigieg all the way over to Janet Yellen and other goobers that Biden has propped up into the silliest of roles and completely ruined every single facet of the federal bureaucracy, which again, as we point out quite consistently, is basically the entire functioning U.S. government. Now, why would this be a point of chaos for the Democrats? After all, aren't the Democrats used to going from scandal to scandal to scandal to scandal? That's what they did during the Obama administration. That's what they did during a huge chunk of the Biden administration. Why all of the sudden is there some kind of a problem, some kind of a power struggle at the top? Because no one's running the party. After Kamala Harris lost the presidency, a lot of her campaign staffers and a lot of the Biden campaign staffers and a lot of the former Barack Obama staffers all started fighting amongst themselves. All of them. Because with an election defeat that was so humiliating, by which I mean that a Republican for the first time since 2004 Bush won the popular vote, that a Republican swung all of the swing states, and that at this present time, Trump is still really high in the transition numbers. So anywhere, depending on where you're getting your polling data from, and I'm citing left-leaning sources here, like Morning Consult and CNN polls, show that Trump is currently between the upper 50s to the low 60s in approval ratings so far for his transition process, for policies, and how astute and how efficient Americans believe Trump is going to be in instituting those policies. So Democrats are pointing fingers, and they have been since before the election occurred. You saw some of this in Pennsylvania with local Democrats blaming federal kind of national Democrat members. So if Obama is no longer the leader of the party, because the Harris team is pointing fingers at him and the Biden team is pointing fingers at all of them, who's running the party? The answer is no one. Because as several have pointed out quite consistently, you actually have to blame someone for something. Somebody's got to take the blame for this. And either it's that the left went far too woke and put all of their chips in on race stuff and gender stuff, or maybe it's that the left is, they're too moderate. Maybe they need to be more progressive. Or, hey, maybe we need to lean even heavier into the government censorship wing faction of the party, the kind of establishmentarian view. Those are the three wings that are currently vying for power. And this all boils down to Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the bartender from New York, the great paragon of U.S. civics, who openly said that all two branches of the U.S. government were important. She is vying for a top position. A top position in what? Well, she wants a top position in the House Oversight Committee, which is one of the most important positions in Congress, because that's where really one of the last places that you get to rein in the administrative state, which, given that runs the country, kind of an important committee. Well, Nancy Pelosi has been writing letters, the more establishment corporate wing of the Democratic Party, which is also suffering because a lot of corporate assets are starting to play really nice with Republicans. Mark Zuckerberg, for example, just donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural committee. So Nancy Pelosi's angry and struggling, and again, half dead because she's decrepit. So when she's not wine drunk, she's writing letters on behalf of Jerry Connolly, Democratic representative from Virginia, who's currently running against the far to the left progressive AOC on this oversight committee member. Now, why is Alexandria Ocasio making such waves? Well, because she's literally justifying violence with the old "I'm not racist, but" line in front of reporters. So in the murder of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, AOC gets in front of the country and does kind of the Elizabeth Warren routine. And, take a look.
taken from a diagnosis. And I think that this collective American experience, which is so twisted to have in the wealthiest nation in the world, all of that pain that people have experienced is being concentrated on this event. And it's really important that we take a step back. This is not to comment, and this is not to say that an act of violence is justified. But I think for anyone who is confused or shocked or appalled.
So she goes on to basically blame the healthcare industry for killing tens of millions of Americans, even though, again, the United States healthcare system also concurrently saves more individuals than arguably any other healthcare system on earth. Again, has a lot of problems, but that's not what I'm going to focus on at the moment. I'm not saying violence is justified, but hilarious. The far left progressive kind of Bernie-style Marxian mob rule stuff is, in fact, trying its best to become the main wing of the Democratic Party. The last part, the last faction of the Democratic Party that is losing viability by the day because it's more in tune with the right than the left, is Senator John Fetterman. We're going to get to that in a little bit later because we got to talk about some of these Biden pardons with Jim Pfaff. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
UIPC.
You get a pardon. Get out Oprah Winfrey. Everyone gets a pardon if you know you're a Chinese spy with 47,000 files of child porn. That's the Joe Biden way. And to talk about pardons, nominations, and the other stuff that only he truly can, we bring on Jim Pfaff, the president of the Conservative Caucus, the man with the plan. Jim, good to see you.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me, Tony.
Well, let's dive in. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the updates on Hunter Biden's pardon. And then the jail doors burst loose yesterday. Tell us about today, I should say. Tell us about some of these crazy pardons.
Goodness gracious. Joe Biden is, I believe, probably not driving this process beyond Hunter when you consider, he's making the ultimate decision, but how is it that suddenly we see this need to pardon two Chinese espionage agents and a pornographer? Where did that come from? There are always a few weird pardons that happen, and the process brings in to the queue often. And there is a process that typically takes place in the White House before you get to pardons. But you bring people in. I think one of the reasons for the pardon option in the Constitution being in the hands of the president is to try to fix wrongs. Justice systems are run by flawed human beings. Mistakes happen. Bad things take place. I see no reason to pardon two Chinese people convicted of espionage and a pornographer, and no explanation is really clear on this. And by the way, when you add to the fact that Hunter Biden had this broad pardon that exonerates him from everything from almost the moment he went into the board of Burisma.
Wild.
This is crazy time. You always get a few crazy ones that seem weird, but this goes beyond the pale, in my opinion.
I just can't imagine right at and again, the timing here. It'd be one thing to say, look, there's this block of time that when people started getting mad at Hunter, and we're going to go ahead and just slap a pardon down here on these three things that he's accused of and he's been convicted of. That's an argument that you can make because you say, look, well, these jurors may have heard in advance these Republican congressmen say big, stinky, mean things, and so that's why they voted to convict. That's not what happened. Biden's like, anything he did, anything he didn't do. We're going to go all the way up to the statute of limitations on this very specific Foreign Agent Registration Act. It's like, did Biden's lawyers know that he just basically admitted that Hunter Biden violated federal law along several different points? I do not believe I had Biden trying to Gerald Ford his son on my bingo card for this year. It's bonkers. And not to this extent, I should say.
Well, listen, there was an argument for Gerald Ford to pardon Richard Nixon, and it was an odd and similarly odd pardon, just what might happen.
Right. What crimes he committed or may have committed.
That's right. And so the purpose of that pardon was, we got a former president of the United States. Why would we drag this out? What real justice are we going to mete out if he were convicted? Go through an entire trial process, which would go through that's a real problem. In the case of Hunter Biden, we have something much different. We have very real actions that could reveal, or potentially, in my case, likely would reveal, in my mind, I should say, might likely reveal a deep amount of corruption throughout our system, not just related to Hunter Biden. You know, what Richard Nixon did was he authorized G. Gordon Liddy and some others to go steal information from his political opponents. I'm not saying that's good. It's bad. It's really, really bad. It doesn't even compare to the kind of corruption that's going on, or potentially going on, with Hunter Biden.
Can you imagine?
But, you know,
but before you move on to that next point, I just want to just prompt a little hypothetical here. Can you imagine if like 50, 60 intelligence agents from the FBI, the NSA, the CIA would have come out and said, this whole Watergate accusation against Richard Nixon, that's all a bunch of hearsay. It's actually Russian disinformation. And you had like letters. People would be calling for the CIA and the FBI to be burnt to the ground if that had happened back during Watergate. But this happened in 2020. Nobody bats an eye.
That's right. And that actually goes right to the point, though, too, because it's not just the inherent corruption of Hunter Biden making tens of thousands of dollars a month when he has no experience in the energy industry, and at the same time that his father was the heading up as vice president the Ukraine situation. Okay, that's bad all by itself.
Right. But
when you add to this all the lawfare that was brought up against Donald Trump, and the the inherent problem of the whole process of utilizing the government for political purposes in so many ways, this is something we need to root out, not avoid. And then again, you've got Chinese espionage being pardoned. It's crazy because, my friend Peter Schweitzer wrote a book, Secret Empires, and we also find out that there are Chinese connections in this whole Hunter Biden thing. Mm-hmm. How does that relate to these people? I'm not saying it does, or that I know it does. That question's in my mind, because there is a lot going on here that Joe Biden doesn't want to talk about, that roots out very real corruption, not just this crass, I want to do something, not merely this, I want to do something to my political enemy's problem. It's much deeper than that. This is, I don't know of any accusations against Richard Nixon that he was literally financially benefiting off of his service as president or vice president before that. But yeah, that's exactly what we think may have been happening with Joe Biden. We need to get lawfare and corruption rooted out of our government, and I'm hopeful that Donald Trump, and certainly I have true hope that he will, Donald Trump needs to root that out of our system, and the people he's appointing reveals that he might be very serious about it. So I'm very hopeful for what might be happening this next 4 years.
We'll get into that hopeful in just a moment, but I want to point out something that, so traitors be damned is a famous quote throughout history, obviously. But Margaret Thatcher went one step further. They were talking to her about the death penalty, and they were very mad that she was suggesting that, there might actually be espionage agents arrested and convicted in the UK that would be hanged. And she advocated for them to be hanged. And she said, traitors be damned and spies be hanged is one of the foundations for ultimate justice and protection of your people. I'm amazed that we have, again, people convicted of spying on behalf of China. And I've looked into some of these cases. So, we're looking at Jin Shalin. We're looking at especially Yanjun Zhu, was sentenced to 20 years in prison for plotting to steal proprietary information from American aviation companies and give them to China. And when I say plotting, I mean, he was in the process of going to collect the information with China waiting and ready. The guy's just terrible at hiding his communication methods when he got caught. I'm sorry, that's hangable offense. That is a hangable offense. That is high treason. And this nonsense is just bonkers. So now I think I understand a little bit why some of the, I don't want to say the moderate leaning Democrats, but the not as crazy Democrats like Fetterman did agree to meet with Pete Hegseth and possibly are agreeing to meet with Kash Patel. If we actually get some Senate Democrats, one or two of them, to vote in favor of Trump's nominations, that's a page leaf turn for sure. What do you think?
It is, and it would help put a stronger support behind these nominations, both of which, the two you referred to right there, are solid ones. In fact, the attacks against mostly Pete Hegseth, but to some degree Kash Patel, are so absurd. Both of them are entirely qualified for the positions that they're going to be part of, and Democrats ought to vote for them. Also, every Republican ought to vote for them as well, too, because many Republicans that have had any discussion or hint that they might not vote for either of these two men are people who voted willingly for Joe Biden's appointees, most of whom were execrable. Like they might have been qualified. Like Lloyd Austin was qualified on his resume to be SecDef, to Secretary of Defense. He, though, was very corrupt in his actions. He was an abject failure, and that was brought out in hearings at the time, knowing that he was going to implement DEI, and then seeing he went to a far deeper degree than anyone imagined, that these people are willing to vote for those folks and yet question Kash Patel and Pete Hegseth, maybe even Robert F. Kennedy Jr., all of whom are qualified to do these things. So on the principle that advice and consent is a real principle. I mean, you do want the Senate to be a backstop if there's some really bad nomination that happens. But at the same time, it is right to say that you want a president to be able to roughly get the picks that they want if the people are generally qualified to be there. So Republicans will do that for Democrats, many of them in the Senate, not all of them, all day long. But they won't even allow their own president in their own party to have the same preference is really an outrage.
So I do think it's an outrage. One of the concerns, well, let me flip it to you this way, because we're just about out of time. Do you think that we'll see, and I don't know, I'm kind of wishing upon a star for such a situation, but if any of the Republican senators get a little bit nonsensical with some of the nominations in one of the nomination hearings, do you think that we might see one of the nominees bring up that senator had no problem voting for a Lloyd Austin or someone similar?
It would be my hope that they would do that. But I will say this. The Joni Ernst example is the paradigm of what we need to be doing from the grassroots. Joni Ernst was pushing hard to kibosh Pete Hegseth's nomination, and MAGA World went nuts online and called her. I was doing it myself, by the way, called her out on that, and she's changed her opinion. We need to be doing that from the grassroots as well, too. Every person that supported Donald Trump at the polls needs to tell these senators, we're done with you. Donald Trump's the guy who actually understands what we need done. We're going to support what he has to say, unless there's some reason not to, that they disagree. But that hadn't happened yet. Yes. We need to take these senators on and say, we're not going to put up with it anymore. You serve the American people and not the other way around. That was a great first step when it came to Joni Ernst, and Pete Hegseth, I now predict, will get nominated, or at least I believe he will. Right. Now we need to take it even further and expand it out to any senators who won't just play ball with people qualified to do what Donald Trump won bigly, if I may put it that way, at the polls.
Right. And that's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to Americans who appear to be getting a bit of a longer memory when it comes to the 6-year term of the senator instead of just the House. So, Jim, Pfaff, thank you very much for joining us. Speaking of great grassroots organizations, the Conservative Caucus, very excellent. You should check them out. It's in the description below. Thanks again, man.
Thanks so much, Tony. Good to be with you.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal and first on 93 WIBC.
On 93 WIBC.
Well, we've got a big pile of just garbage social media posts from all over the internet here for you, the finest people in the land. Jerry Lopez, Indie Spanglish over on X. Are you ready for just the worst?
Oh, I'm ready. Let's get into this.
All right. Well, first up, we've got Chuck Schumer. I teased this a little earlier on in the show, and it is as bad as you think. He says, right now, the vast majority of funds intended for emergency disaster relief have nearly dried up. The federal government has very few resources left for helping small businesses, farmers, people rebuilding their homes, communities fixing their main streets, and repairing their highways. Not in Indiana. This is a problem for states across the country, whether they be represented by Dems or Republicans. The only fix is congressional action. Democrats are working across the aisle to reach an agreement, blah, 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 blah. No government shutdown. What do you think about that, Jer?
I mean, that's very funny coming from him, considering we helped out all the illegals, all the refugees, everybody that came over here seeking asylum. They turned around and gave people in North Carolina checks for $750 that I guess was a loan. So, no, congressional action is what got us into this mess. We need to tell the Dems to get their hands out of the cookie jar.
I got a question, Jerry. So he says that this is for helping rebuild from like emergency disaster relief. Didn't we give $1 billion to African nations who suffered natural disasters? Wasn't that like 2 days ago?
And we haven't had any here recently, except for all summer.
Oh, of course. You know, all the states that are either on fire or underwater. Well, let's head over to the ACLU, but for New York. So the New York Civil Liberty Union tweeted, Jordan Neely, the crazy homeless man saying he was going to kill everybody and like making violent, motions and stuff. He deserved basic human rights, a safe place to live, enough to eat, and access to mental health care. He should still be alive today. Now, I was sent this tweet already. You, however, shared the community note underneath it, which is just incredible. Help us out.
Oh, the community note is where the win is here. So remember, this person said he deserved basic human rights, a place to live, place to eat, and access to mental health care. Okay. Well, they forgot to leave agreement with prosecutors after he punched a 67-year-old woman in the he was given free access to stable housing and health care at a treatment facility in the Bronx, yet he abandoned that after 13 days.
Oh, well, how about that? So he punches a woman in 2021. And he gets all of that stuff, and then he gives it up.
Tony, a 67-year-old woman.
Well, gee, how about that? It's almost like it's not about what you're given, but it's about the kind of person you are. All right, well, let's move along. I'm sure that a doctor might know more than just you and I, regular dudes. Here's Angel Jones, PhD. She says, white privilege is being able to kill a black man with your bare hands. Raise $3 million for your defense. Get acquitted, then celebrate at a bar like you're not a trash human being. Wow. Do you feel lectured, Jerry?
No, she's a special kind of stupid. I just would like to pinpoint the last tweet about healthcare. From the way that I look at it, it looks like Daniel Perry just provided an adult abortion for this guy to help get him out. I mean, at what point in time is it okay to threaten, shoot at? This takes us back to the case in Kenosha. Like, you just can't go around and do this stuff and expect no repercussions. It's a shame that he even went to jail. It's a shame that he sat in there happy he's acquitted. The right thing happened. But yeah, it's nuts out here.
I just want to point this out. So are white people the only ones who are allowed to raise money for their defense? Was Kamala Harris not tweeting about bail for the BLM individuals burning down cities?
The Minnesota Bail Fund. Yeah.
Ah. Well, let's head on over to Blue Sky. We've really gotten X's out of the way. We got some great just filth over from the site where people, post disturbing pictures of children and such. Well, this is from Cheryl Wakel. She calls herself the leftist lawyer. She says, I'd like the state killing countless trans kids to be a bigger crime than killing one health insurance CEO, or the state murdering anyone with a womb through abortion bans. What?
Did you say anyone with a womb?
And yeah, like
you couldn't just say the word woman. You couldn't just say the word woman.
Also, did you notice that they said murdering anyone with a womb through abortion bans? Yet again, they don't consider abortion murder. Like the self-awareness is lost.
But California does. If you shoot a pregnant woman, you get 2 counts of murder. So make that make sense.
Well, let's go a little further here. Let's dive deeper into this dumpster. The state killing countless trans kids. Where is this? What in the
what state
Wizard
is
of
that?
Oz F is this nonsense? Well, maybe we should leave Blue Sky for a bit. Head over to Politico, great paragon of journalism. You read Politico, don't you?
I mean, I will look at headlines to laugh.
Well, here's one. Adam Kinzinger, he ran out in front of the public and he said, "I'm not afraid of Trump's jail threats."
Pay attention to me!
What do you think, Jer?
Yeah, I mean, your soundbite said it all right there. Please just keep making me relevant. Right, that's all this is. Listen, I hope he goes on a revenge tour that we've never seen in this world. This man deserves that more than anybody else. He's been shot. He's been taken in and out of court on leadless trials. Some will say that he got cheated out of the previous election. He won this time. I want him to burn the state down.
Dude, have you seen the Time magazine cover for Trump?
Oh, with him?
Yeah, and people are really upset because it's like a photo taken of Trump at like a flattering angle. Like it's a good looking picture. And as one of the awful pseudo journos, I have to sort through what all of the people don't realize this. Almost all of the photographers out there are far leftists. So I know you search for a lot of photographs too for like your IBSU Not series. All of the photos of Democrats are like wonderful, polished, photoshopped like dream AI images, and then all of the photos of like Republicans are all washed out and from the worst angle possible.
That's funny you mention that because I feel like I do have to go look for stock photos of people. I can't use the photo
ridiculous.
on the article.
Getty Images, who we have a license with, it's ridiculous. And I learned this from some of the guys over at the Ruthless podcast. I have started writing down particular egregious, like from a photography series of an event. I've like written down their names, and when I actually go report on scene at places, I confront them about it. This happened in Chicago. But that's That's story for another time. We got one more. This is just for you. I got this one for you.
Yeah.
Politico today says, this is just today, the FBI didn't deploy undercover agents on January 6th. Watchdog report finds undercutting conspiracy theories. They posted that today. FBI says,
yeah, but didn't the DOJ say that they could not confirm nor deny they had people there?
Man, you think I had that?
This is so stupid. This is so stupid.
Whoa, well, look at that. If you're watching the live stream, I just happen to have the part of the DOJ memo that says, ahem, and I quote, I'll put lower my glasses for a little reading, Tony here. We determined that of the 26 agents who were in D.C. on January 6th, in connection with the events of January 6th, 4 agents entered the Capitol during the riot. An additional 13 entered the restricted area around the Capitol, which was a security perimeter established in preparation for January 6th. And 9 neither entered a restricted area nor entered the Capitol or otherwise engaged in illegal activity. So 9 didn't, but 13 plus 4, 17 of them engaged in illegal activity. Hey!
By their own memo. That's what they're saying. How can Politico put this out today and not be found responsible for this? Honestly,
my honest question is, there are a couple of good writers at Politico.
I
want to know how they
hold. This is
hold.
not an op-ed, right, Tony?
No, it's legal. It is
op-ed.
a legal analysis piece.
Make it make sense, man.
Yeah, there's 3 kinds of news. You got straight news, which is just supposed to be the facts, almost never is. You have commentary, which is just my opinion. And then you have analysis, which is where I take the facts and then I give you, based on a series of experts and if I have an experience to add, the analysis of what this means. So that's kind of the breakdown. But you're right, Politico's garbage. I can see why you only laugh at the headlines because it's a little depressing. Jerry Lopez, awful tweets. Thanks for another great week, dude.
Hey, I appreciate you, brother. Have a great rest of your week.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
If you can plan
Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
If you are listening to us on the radio, or perhaps you're watching on one of our syndication TV partners, I would encourage you to head over to the social media, either over on Twitter X or over at YouTube. At some point, YouTube /Daily Signal, because the comment section just continually keeps me rolling. Just the nonsense that goes on during the show is truly something to behold. What you should not behold is indeed the same kind of garbage the media is not learning their lessons from. So you just don't hate the media enough. Now, Jerry and I talked a little bit during Awful Tweets about some of the extra spicy garbage in which we were told for years that it was a conspiracy theory to suggest that the FBI had informants, had perhaps provocateurs, had basically undercover agents amidst the protesters and the rioters on January 6th in front of the Capitol. And the reason that people had concerns is because the FBI, again, this is according to official court documents and an admission from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI had undercover agents who prompted kind of 3%er right-wing guys in Michigan to come up with a plan to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer. So it was the FBI who tried to trick individuals in Michigan into kidnapping the governor. That became a whole thing, and then the court case was dismissed because it was literally the FBI who set it up as a provocateur kind of a situation to kind of trap political enemies in that kind of a mistake. So people had those kind of questions, said, well, did this happen on January 6th? And the FBI on committee refused to answer. And the media just mocked Republicans. Oh, you're such conspiracy theorists. Oh, ha, ha, that's so funny. Well, now, according to this DOJ report, yes, ladies and gentlemen, it does appear that there were at least 17 undercover FBI agents among the members of the January 6th rioters. Now, does this mean that they did any provocation? We don't know. We don't know yet. Now, this is one of the reasons I think that, again, this should be completely transparent. We should release all of the footage. That it should all be completely released. It should all be documented. That's why the January 6th committee shredding and getting rid of all their documents is extremely suspicious. Because then no one can ever be exonerated. Nothing can ever be looked at again. So that aside, we now move on to Sam Stein and a bunch of other leftist idiots. Sam Stein's over at MSNBC in the Bulwark. He cites the Time interview that they did with Trump for the Man of the Year interview. And this is what Sam Stein says. Trump tells Time he's not sure he can get the price of groceries down. Quote, it's hard to bring things down once they're up. You know, it's very hard, end quote. And then the leftist media has completely run with that and said, Trump's admit you voted for Trump. Now he admits he can't even do a thing about grocery prices. Guys, it is the most simple of things to do. This is the first thing ever. Whenever I see a quote ever from the right, from the left, from the center, internationally, locally, doesn't matter, someone uses a quote as some kind of a punching bag line on social media as the framework for their story, read the context. The first comment underneath should be context. In fact, you should have the context of whatever quote it is. It's actually a journalistic practice that I very wholeheartedly disagree with, which is putting a quote at the top of the article to lure people in and then going down the article. I think that's a bad practice. I think that's clickbait. And even though a lot of my friends and colleagues choose to do this, I think it's a poor practice. So what did Trump actually say? So Time asked Trump, if prices of groceries don't come down, will your presidency be a failure? Trump says, I don't think so. Look, they, as in Biden, got them up. I'd like to bring them down. It's hard to bring things down once they're up. You know, it's very hard. But I think that they will. I think that energy is going to bring them down. I think a better supply chain is going to bring them down. You know, the supply chain is still broken. It's broke. So he starts giving examples and talking about ways that his administration would bring grocery prices down. And the media doesn't report that for two reasons. Number one, it's actually very jarring for those who have been told that Donald Trump is like some blundering, evil, oaf, knuckle-dragging idiot to actually hear him list articulate answers. So Trump starts talking about the supply chain crisis and, for example, about like automated shipping and shipping containers in various ports around the United States. And that's jarring to a lot of people because then it looks like, oh my God, this Trump guy kind of like knows what he's doing. And he's surrounded himself this time with people who know what they're doing, but they're going to try so hard. And his entire administration, I'm just letting you know, especially for the first couple of months, is going to be, it's day 3 of Trump not painting every road solid gold and fixing everything and gas isn't 15 cents a gallon. Every single day will be like that. And then when Trump does deliver on promises, if he does, I hope he does, then they will ignore those. There won't be news stories. And not just from the legacy media outlets, from those left-leaning nonprofit outlets that are funded by leftist Swiss billionaires. They'll ignore it too. Because they're the same ones who, right now, are ignoring the failures of the Biden administration because they don't think it's news. This is the next level of kind of warfare in the journalistic hemisphere. What is news? What isn't news? Well, unfortunately for everyone, what is news comes down to two things. Number one, it's what do people care about? Number two, it's what impacts the large group of people. That determines what news is. We'll be back, I think, on Monday with a little bit more. Might have a little something special over on YouTube and X. Thank you very much for swinging by. It's always a joy to be with you. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC.